March 18, 1945. Near a temporary American processing camp outside Koblenz, Germany, the war was entering its final brutal weeks, and something deeply disturbing had just been discovered. A column of exhausted German prisoners had arrived under heavy guard before dawn. Most were Wehrmacht soldiers. Some were barely standing. A few wore pieces of uniforms that no longer matched. But one prisoner immediately caught the attention of the Americans, not because he looked frightened, because he didn't. While the others stared at the ground, this man stood perfectly still. His black SS collar tabs remained hidden beneath a field jacket. His boots were polished. His face showed no emotion. Then Corporal Raymond Ellis noticed something strange. Several liberated prisoners from a nearby camp had been brought to the same area earlier that morning. The moment they saw the German officer, they froze. One elderly man began shaking uncontrollably. A woman covered her mouth. Another survivor whispered only 3 words. "That's one of them." Nobody spoke after that. The wind moved through the camp. The American guards exchanged uneasy looks. And suddenly everyone wanted to know the same thing. Who exactly was this prisoner, and what had he done? Sergeant Walter Briggs ordered the prisoner separated from the others. The German offered no resistance. He simply followed instructions. His name, according to captured documents, was Klaus Richter, former SS Hauptsturmführer. The moment intelligence officers heard the rank, the atmosphere changed. Richter was escorted into a small wooden administration building. Outside, rumors spread quickly. Inside, Lieutenant Frank Mercer opened a folder and sat across from him. "State your full name." "Klaus Richter." "Unit." I declined to answer. Mercer stared. "You decline?" "To answer." Mercer stared. "You decline?" Richter nodded. "I am a prisoner of war." The lieutenant leaned back. Something about the man's calmness felt wrong. Not confidence, not bravery. Something colder. Hours later, more survivors arrived from nearby liberated facilities. American investigators hoped they could identify prisoners responsible for atrocities committed during the final months of the war. Several witnesses were shown photographs. Some recognized guards, others recognized officers. But when Richter's photograph appeared, the room became silent. A translator named Anna Weiss watched their faces carefully. One man pointed. His hand trembled. "That officer." Another nodded. Then another, and another. But when investigators asked for details, many survivors struggled to speak. The memories were too painful. The room filled with tears. One woman simply turned away. Anna lowered her eyes. She had translated hundreds of testimonies since crossing into Germany, yet something about this case felt different. By evening, investigators believed Richter had served at a concentration camp evacuated weeks earlier. Thousands of prisoners had been forced onto death marches. Many never reached their destination. Many were never identified. Many were simply buried where they fell. The next morning, Captain David Reynolds arrived with new intelligence reports. The documents described mass graves discovered along evacuation routes, bodies, hundreds of them, no names, no records, no identities, just dead prisoners. The captain placed the reports on the table. "We think he knows who they were." Lieutenant Mercer frowned. "What makes you think that?" "He supervised transport records." The room became quiet. If Richter cooperated, families might finally learn what happened to loved ones who had vanished. If he refused, countless victims would remain anonymous forever. Mercer returned to the interrogation room. Richter sat exactly where he had been left, almost motionless. The lieutenant placed photographs on the table. Rows of uncovered bodies, freshly discovered graves, abandoned burial sites. Richter looked at them. His expression never changed. "We need names." Silence. "You maintained records." Silence. "Families deserve answers." Richter folded his hands. "I have nothing to say." Mercer's jaw tightened. "Nothing. No." The lieutenant stood. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then Mercer left. Outside, frustration spread rapidly among officers. Some soldiers wanted harsher methods. Others demanded patience. The debate grew louder with every passing hour. Meanwhile, liberated prisoners continued arriving. Stories emerged: starvation, executions, forced marches, disappearances. Children separated from parents. Brothers lost. Sisters missing. Entire families erased. Every testimony added weight to the growing pressure surrounding Richter. Yet the SS officer remained unmoved. 3 days later, the case reached higher command. Reports moved through multiple headquarters. Officers discussed legal authority. Intelligence divisions exchanged information. Eventually, the matter landed on the desk of a man whose name carried enormous weight throughout the American Army, General George S. Patton. At first, many assumed he would never personally involve himself. The war was moving rapidly. Entire fronts demanded attention. But the reports continued coming. The issue wasn't merely about one SS officer. It was about the dead. Hundreds of dead prisoners whose identities might disappear forever. Patton read every page. Then he requested additional information. Witness statements, investigator reports, field intelligence summaries. Hours later, he made a decision. He would visit personally. The news spread through headquarters faster than anyone expected. Soldiers exchanged looks. Officers straightened uniforms. Everyone understood the significance. Patton rarely wasted time. If he was coming, this mattered. The following afternoon, military vehicles entered the camp. Dust followed behind them. Conversations stopped. Men stood at attention. Patton stepped out. His ivory-handled revolvers remained at his side. His expression revealed nothing. The camp seemed quieter the moment he arrived. Officers quickly briefed him. No interruptions. No exaggerations. Just facts. Witnesses identified Richter. Evidence suggested involvement in prisoner administration. Records were missing. Mass graves remained unidentified. And the officer refused cooperation. Patton listened carefully. Then he asked one question. Has anyone spoken to the survivors directly? Yes, sir. I want to hear them myself. For the next hour, Patton met witnesses. Not dozens. Just enough. Enough to understand. Enough to see the pain still living behind their eyes. An elderly survivor described losing his brother during a death march. A woman described watching prisoners collapse from exhaustion. Another survivor described bodies left beside roads. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody dramatized anything. They simply remembered. And somehow that made it worse. Patton said very little. He mostly listened. The room remained silent after each testimony. When the final witness finished speaking, nobody moved. Patton looked down at the table, then toward the window, then back again. Finally, he stood. Bring Richter. Minutes later, the SS officer entered. The atmosphere changed instantly. Several witnesses stiffened. Others refused to look at him. Patton remained seated. Richter stood before him. Neither man spoke at first. The room waited. Patton studied him. Richter stared forward. The silence stretched. Then Patton spoke. His voice stayed calm. Your name is Klaus Richter. Yes. You administered prisoner transports. I was assigned administrative duties. Patton nodded slowly. And these dead prisoners? He gestured toward photographs. You know who many of them were. Richter remained silent. Patton paused. The room went completely still. Do you? Finally, Richter answered. Possibly. A murmur moved through the room. Patton didn't react. Then provide the names. No. The room froze. Several officers looked stunned. Even after everything, they had expected some hesitation, some uncertainty. Not this. Not a direct refusal. Patton continued watching him. Why? Richter's answer came immediately. They were enemies of the Reich. No one spoke. The translator stopped writing. A witness lowered his head. For a moment, even the air seemed heavier. Patton looked at the photographs, then back at Richter. His expression never changed. When they died, the war was already lost. Richter said nothing. Patton continued. They were starving. Silence. They were exhausted. Silence. They were using. Richter stared forward. Then came the response that shocked everyone. I followed orders. The room erupted. Several officers stepped forward. One survivor shouted. Another began crying. Military police moved quickly. Patton raised one hand. Instantly, the room fell silent again. Everyone waited. Patton remained seated. His voice stayed calm, almost quiet. And somehow that felt more intimidating than anger. I have heard that sentence before. Nobody moved. Patton leaned slightly forward. Do you know what separates civilization from barbarism, Captain Richter? The SS officer remained silent. Patton answered his own question. The willingness to recognize another human being. Nobody blinked. Nobody shifted. The room stayed completely still. Patton pointed toward the photographs. Those men had names. Silence. They had families. Silence. They mattered. Richter's expression finally changed. Only slightly. But everyone noticed. For the first time, uncertainty appeared. Patton saw it too. His voice remained steady. You can refuse me. Another pause. You cannot erase them. The room remained silent. Patton stood. Slowly. Deliberately. Every eye followed him. He walked toward the photographs, toward the faces of the dead, then turned back. History is ending for your Reif. No response. But history is just beginning for those victims. Richter swallowed. A small movement, yet impossible to miss. Patton continued. Their names will be found. Silence. Their families will know. Silence. And every record we recover will tell the world exactly what happened. The SS officer stared downward. For the first time. Not at Patton. Not at the officers. At the floor. The room noticed. Patton noticed. Everyone noticed. The general spoke one final time. Whether you help or not determines only one thing. Richter slowly looked up. Patton's eyes never left him. Whether you leave behind one decent act before history judges you. The room became silent again, longer than before. Then something unexpected happened. Richter sat down. No one had ordered him to. No one spoke. Minutes passed. Finally, he asked for paper. A pencil was placed before him. The scratching sound filled the room. Name after name. Transport numbers. Locations. Burial sites. Records. Witnesses watched in disbelief. Officers exchanged looks. Nobody interrupted. For nearly 3 hours, Richter wrote. Not everything, but enough. Enough to identify victims. Enough to locate additional records. Enough to reconnect some families with lost relatives. When it ended, Patton quietly left the room. No celebration. No speech. No victory. Just silence. Outside, evening shadows stretched across the camp. The war would soon end. But countless wounds would remain. Years later, investigators would use recovered information to identify victims once thought lost forever. Families received answers. Not all, but some. And sometimes, after unimaginable suffering, even a single answer mattered. The soldiers who witnessed that day never forgot it. Not because Patton shouted, not because he threatened, but because he reminded everyone in that room of something war constantly tried to destroy: human dignity. The dead could not speak for themselves. The living had to do it for them. And sometimes justice began with something as simple as refusing to let a name disappear. In a world consumed by violence, that lesson endured long after the guns fell silent. What would you have done? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more World War II stories where humanity, war, and difficult decisions collided, make sure to subscribe.